Okay, joining me now is Phil Klotzbach from Colorado State University. And Phil, everybody sees you in the spring when the hurricane forecast comes out. And we kind of know by your title what you do. You're a Atlantic seasonal hurricane forecaster. But what does your job entail?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me, Craig. Yeah, so basically, what we do at Colorado State, we've done this every year since 1984, founded by Dr. Bill Gray, all the way back almost 40 years ago, is try to predict how active the upcoming hurricane season is going to be. And the way that we do that is we look a lot at basically precursor signals. So basically, what signals in the atmosphere and the ocean tended to precede active seasons, and alternatively, which set tended to precede inactive seasons. And what you'll find is that you do get kind of a recurring set of climate conditions. Basically, one set tends to precede active seasons, a different set precedes inactive seasons. A couple of the big predictors that we use every year, one of the biggest ones is whether we're going to have El Nino or not. El Nino is warmer than normal waters in the eastern and central tropical Pacific Ocean. And while obviously hurricanes, or we're talking about what goes on in the Atlantic Ocean, what happens in the Pacific Ocean does matter, because typically when you have an El Nino, that tends to increase the strength of winds at 20, 30,000 feet in the atmosphere out of the west, which combined with low level winds in the tropical Atlantic that blow out of the east, increases what's known as vertical wind shear. So that change in wind direction and speed with height in the atmosphere becomes stronger, and too much shear tears apart hurricanes. So that's one of the big predictors that our group at CSU, as well as other groups issuing seasonal forecasts such as NOAA, use. We also look obviously very closely at water temperatures in the Atlantic basin. When the northern tropical Atlantic is warmer than normal, basically that provides more fuel for developing tropical storms and hurricanes.
So you mentioned Bill Gray, who was really a brilliant and a wonderful man. And he had many admonitions that he would say about those who try to predict the weather. Can you share one of those admonitions, and what's your motivation? Because you continue to go forward and try to predict the weather.
Yes, that is correct. So Dr. Gray started these back in 1984. In addition to doing the seasonal forecast, which is kind of what he's best known for, he made fundamental contributions to tropical cyclone genesis, structure, intensity change. As a giant in the field of tropical meteorology, and certainly I'm very indebted to him and have had the great privilege of working with him for about 15 years. But one of the admonitions that he really liked was from the head of the Paris Observatory in the middle of the 19th century, whose name was Arago, who stated that never, no matter what may be the progress of science, will honest scientific men who have regard for their reputations venture to predict the weather. And certainly, I think it was appropriate in the mid-19th century and still holds today. You know, seasonal forecasts, there are clues in the climate system, but these forecasts certainly don't work out perfectly every year. Some years they're quite good. Other years we have major busts. And for example, in 2022, we forecast an above normal season. This season's likely to come out close to average, maybe a little bit below when the end of the season rolls around.
Right. And I don't want to steal your thunder, because you've already kind of tipped your hat that you're going to be going into a deeper discussion in November when you make your CSU release then. But is there anything you can kind of just share with us that you think may have been bigger drivers?
Yeah, so with 2022, we forecast a pretty busy season in early April. We updated our forecast in early June and forecast an even busier season. And then in August, we came down somewhat. The season still has a few weeks to go, but at this point, it does look like the season's going to end up probably a little bit below normal. Obviously, it's hard to know exactly because we do have a few weeks left to go. One of the big surprises, I think, this year was that we had a very, very quiet August. We had no storms formed during the entire month of August. That's the first time that's happened since 1997. Now, that was then followed by quite a busy September, which is more what we expected to see. But the very quiet August was a surprise. Normally, with La Nina, you have reduced vertical wind shear, and this year, especially during August, the wind shear was quite a bit elevated, and we think that was due to basically some mid-latitude influences that came down into the tropics that basically increased the shear across the Caribbean through most of the subtropical Atlantic, and really tended to knock down the month of August.
Yeah, and so I guess lessons learned, and then hopefully that'll apply going forward, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So obviously, we're always trying to think like, again, this isn't going to be a massive forecast bust. We certainly have ones where we forecast above and got below, and this is more above and got normal. But the key is in trying to figure out, are there ways to better be able to predict basically what happened during the month of August, be able to anticipate that. We actually did talk about that in the August forecast, but it certainly was a stronger mid-latitude forcing than we anticipated. So we have some ideas of ways we can hopefully adjust for that to somewhat better be able to forecast future hurricane seasons. And certainly when we come out with our discussion in November, we'll talk about that. But then definitely when we do our first forecast for the 2023 hurricane season in early April, we'll talk about that in more detail.
Sounds good. And of course, for the followers of you, if they don't run into you at a conference, they'll probably run into you on a hiking trail, right? You're a big outdoorsman.
That's right. I love living in Colorado, and definitely recommend. If you don't live in Colorado, coming out to Colorado for a visit and checking out some of the trails. There's a lot of really good ones out here.
All right, great. Thanks for joining us, Phil.
Sure. Thank you.